1,000 cycle, maximum level, 7 centimeters per second. Quiet grooves.
Nine. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Eagle Houston, we rig you now. You're a go for PDI, over. Roger, understand. We're go, same type, we're go. 60 seconds. Lights on. 40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 20, down a half. 30 seconds. Forward, just. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ACA at a descent. Mode control both auto, descent, engine command override off. Engine arm off. 413 is in. We copy you down, Eagle. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. I'm at the foot of the ladder. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
You have just heard the voice of the first man to walk on the moon, Neil A. Armstrong. A few minutes later, he was joined by Edwin E. Aldrin, Jr., his companion in space. They have done what men have dreamed about for centuries. They, along with their fellow astronaut Michael Collins, began their journey on July 16th, when their spaceship Apollo 11 was launched from Cape Kennedy, Florida. However, it was back on May 25, 1961, that President Kennedy decided to ask Congress for a program to send a man to the moon.
Space is open to us now, and our eagerness to share its meaning is not governed by the efforts of others. We go into space because whatever mankind must undertake, free men must fully share. I therefore ask the Congress, above and beyond the increases I have earlier requested for space activities, to provide the funds which are needed to meet the following national goals. First, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish.
But did this journey really begin then, or must we go back still further? Not 10 or 20 years, or even 100 years ago, but perhaps 6,000 years ago, when the first civilizations were growing in the Middle East. The lonely shepherds watching their flocks in the clear Babylonian nights must have gazed long at the heavens and traced out the constellations such as Gemini, Taurus, and Orion. the sun, the moon, the planets, and the stars became strongly integrated with the religious life of the Babylonians. In fact, the first astronomers were the priests who watched the skies fervently and made notes on their clay tablets. Since life was so dependent on the sunshine and rain, every movement or change in the sky was noted as a sign that foretold the future on Earth. No battles were fought, no journey was undertaken, no marriage was performed before the skies were consulted. An eclipse was considered an evil omen.
Look! There is a shadow creeping across the sun. A disaster will befall us.
A famine! We must warn the king.
But at the sign of a ring around a new moon...
Look! Look! It is the sign that a new prince will be born to our ruler.
Through the centuries, the Babylonians learned a good deal about the heavens. Using their tables of lunar motion, they were able to predict fairly accurately when an eclipse would take place. They began to measure time by observing the phases of the moon. They followed a lunar month, beginning a new month every 29 or 30 days with the first appearance of the new moon. The year was divided into 12 lunar months, totaling 354 days. The solar year, a complete cycle of the 4 seasons, was determined to be 365 1/4 days. At certain intervals, an extra month was added to balance both the solar and the lunar year. But the Babylonians, like the ancient Hindus of India and the Mayas of Mexico, believed that the earth was flat and covered over by the dome of heaven, across which the planets and stars moved. The heavenly bodies became a part of their mythology or religion, and astrology, the art of telling the future by the stars, had its beginnings. It is still with us today. These Babylonian astrologers were particularly interested in the constellations that marked the ecliptic, the yearly eastward path followed by the sun. The 12 constellations in the ecliptic are called the signs of the zodiac. They are Sagittarius, the archer; Capricornus, the sea-goat; Aquarius, the water carrier; Pisces, the fishes; Aries, the ram; Taurus, the bull; Gemini, the twins; Cancer, the crab; Leo, the lion; Virgo, the virgin; Libra, the scales; Scorpius, the scorpion. Each sign stands for a particular month of the year, but as the constellations move approximately one space each 2,000 years, the months on the astrology charts do not correspond with the positions of the constellations today. Though much of the work of the Babylonian astronomers dealt with superstitions and myths, they must still be given credit for launching the study of the skies. Remember, their only tools were the naked eye and the fundamentals of arithmetic, which they also developed. But they were the inspiration of the great Greek philosophers that followed.
One of nature's greatest wonders is the ability of the human ear to distinguish among the millions of sounds around us. Listen. Recognize those sounds? Surely. Each sound has a distinctive pitch, loudness, and quality. You will hear later how these characteristics are determined by the frequency, intensity, and form of sound waves in the air. Waves which your ears pick up and analyze. But first, let's investigate what causes sound. The source of every sound is a vibrating body. Take, for example, a drum. The vibrating drumhead pushes against the air every time it moves outward. It shoves the air molecules against other air molecules, compressing the air. This compression moves away as the drumhead moves inward, leaving a region where the air is slightly thinner than normal. On the next outward push of the drumhead, another region of compression is formed and started on its way outward. We call these pulses of compressions and rarefactions pressure waves. As long as the drumhead vibrates, pressure waves will be generated and sent through the air. When waves of sufficient strength reach your ears, they push on your eardrums, setting them to vibrating too. It's these vibrations which your brain interprets as sound.
O gentle presence, peace and joy and power, O life divine that owns each waiting hour, thou love that guards the nestling's faltering flight, keep thou my child on upward wing tonight. Love is our refuge, only with mine eye can I behold the snare, the pit, the fall. His habitation high is here and nigh. His arm encircles me and mine and all. Oh, make me glad for every scalding tear, for hope deferred, ingratitude, disdain, wait and love more, for every hate and fear no ill, since God is good and loss is gain. Beneath the shadow of his mighty wing, in that sweet secret of the narrow way, seeking and finding, with the angels sing, lo, I am with you always. Watch and pray. no snare, no fowler, pestilence or pain, no night drops down upon the troubled breast, when heaven's after smile earth's teardrops gain, and mother finds her home and heavenly rest.
I knew Leo G. Carroll was over a barrel when Tarantula took to the hills. And I really got hot when I saw Jeanette Scott fight a trivet that spits poison and kills. Dana Andrews said prunes gave him the rooms, and passing
I am glad to talk with you today about science and its relationship to the world in which we live. I don't think that there has been any other period in human history when science has loomed as large as it does today in the thinking of men. The great technological changes in this century are the direct consequence of the growth of scientific knowledge. Technological progress has, in its own turn, brought great changes in our social, economic, and political organization. Our present concern with science is a recognition of its enormous power and potentiality in modifying the quality of our lives. Men of intelligence and goodwill are deeply concerned with the problem of directing the power that science has given us to create a better world for mankind. Perhaps I should not start by lecturing to you, but by trying to answer your questions. Do you want to start first, Jim?
I've read a great deal in the newspapers about pure and applied science. I'd like to have you discuss the difference before we go on to anything else.
That's a sensible approach, Jim. Science itself, what you have called pure science, seeks knowledge about the world for its own sake. It is motivated by a deep curiosity about what the world is like, and how almost anything from atoms to complex animals function and behave. The curiosity is not an entirely random one. Scientists, like most other people, believe that nature behaves in a systematic and in an orderly way, that the things that happen in nature are not accidental events unrelated to each other. The curiosity of the scientist is not primarily directed towards observing individual properties of nature, as, for example, the fact that the sky is blue and that the sun as it sets appears much redder than it does at noon. The The curiosity is most importantly directed to finding relationships and connections between all kinds of things that occur in nature. This requires observation, not only of the more obvious manifestations of nature, but also of more subtle phenomena that can be carefully studied only under laboratory conditions. Above all, it requires thought and contemplation. Let me emphasize again that science is knowledge about nature. The word science itself derives from the Latin verb to know. I see that you want to say something, George.
Yes, I do. It sounds like a wonderful thing to do, just to observe and think about light and atoms.
I agree that it is a privilege to be able to be a scientist, but let's discuss that a little later. I want to continue for a moment with a description of applied science as compared to pure science. Which of the commonly recognized professions or activities do you think, George, could be described as applied science?
The most common of these activities would be engineering and medicine, but there are quite a number of others as well. I would think that modern farming could be called applied science, and of course forestry and fishing.
You are quite right. Can you add anything to that, Edith?
Well, I can't think of very many things that people do that aren't at least partly applied science. For instance, even modern housekeeping is a sort of applied science.
You have both emphasized an important aspect of science in the modern world. That is, how deeply it is related to many aspects of our lives. One of the characteristic features of the present century is the extent to which scientific knowledge is used in serving various human purposes. The great improvements in medical knowledge and care have certainly increased human happiness. Our ability to travel rapidly and to communicate with each other easily has made life more enjoyable. I think that the leisure and freedom from back-breaking toil that modern technology has brought is one of the great achievements of the century. These things have resulted from the application of scientific knowledge to human affairs. The base of applied science, or technology, is knowledge, and to continue in the attempt to improve the lot of man, it is necessary that basic knowledge be continually expanded. What we mean by pure research is inquiry into the fundamental properties of the natural world. By applied research, we mean the search for methods of capitalizing on the known properties of nature to achieve some desired end.
Are pure and applied research always different? What I mean to ask is whether or not a scientist decides before he starts to do only basic or applied research.
What you call basic and what you call applied is to some extent a matter of taste. A physicist who studies the forces that hold an atomic nucleus together is certainly doing basic research. An engineer who is designing an improved transmission for an automobile is almost certainly doing applied research. There is a vast area between these two clear cases, and it is not possible to describe all research as either pure or applied. One could find numbers of instances in which basic ideas have been developed in the search for practical devices. One could also find cases in which a basic inquiry has almost at once led to practical results. Scientists do choose between, say, physics, chemistry, and zoology as fields of interest. In physics, for example, they may choose a more limited branch, such as nuclear physics, whose content ranges from extremely abstruse studies of the basic properties of the nucleus to studies directed towards the efficient and safe production of power from nuclear fission. Interest and temperament lead a man into one area of a subject and to a particular kind of emphasis. I should like to point out, however, that the thing that marks a good scientist is a great adaptability to new problems and new situations. It was remarkable in the last World War to note how very effective scientists were in solving urgent technological problems distinctly in the range of applied science, even when the previous experience of the scientist had been in highly abstruse fields. Let's now go on to a somewhat different subject. I would like to ask you, Edith, what kind of a picture you have in your mind when you think of a scientist.
Well, it's hard to answer the question. I suppose that as a person he is much like other people. But there is one thing that bothers me.
What's that?
When I read of the things that a scientist does, I sometimes think of him as a good kind of person who discovers cures for disease and gives us the benefits of electricity. And then sometimes I think of him as a dangerous person who invents atomic bombs and guided missiles that may kill large numbers of people and destroy cities.
The two views of the scientist that you describe are not at all uncommon. I don't think that the scientist, as a scientist, can be considered to possess a greater quality of good than other men, nor do I think that he is more dangerous or more evil than other men. Science itself, in the sense in which it seeks knowledge and understanding, is beyond good and evil. There cannot be a good fact, and there cannot be a bad fact. A knowledge of the facts of nature is neither good nor bad. The structure of ideas that we call scientific theory is not good or bad, except in the sense in which it is an accurate or inaccurate representation of nature. Devices based on scientific knowledge are not in themselves good or bad. They are good or bad only in the sense in which they fulfill or fail to fulfill the function that they are designed to serve.
Just what do you mean by that, Dr. Cush?
Well, for example, there is a good or a bad aeroplane only as it does or does not fly safely, comfortably, and economically. The words good or bad in a moral sense do not apply to science as such. They apply only to the use that society makes of science and of a technology based on it. I think that it is dangerous to ascribe to science or to devices based on scientific knowledge an intrinsically evil quality. This suggests that an increased knowledge may somehow reduce a quality of goodness in human personality and relationships. It suggests that ignorance could perhaps enlarge the goodness in life. These suggestions are totally abhorrent to me, since I believe that increased knowledge and a wise use of knowledge is the certain road to a better life.
I think that I would agree that knowledge in itself is not evil. But wouldn't you admit that quite a number of inventions have done a great deal of harm, sometimes more harm than good?
You are, of course, quite right. Let me, however, emphasize again that the harm arises from the social use to which science and technology are put. I don't think that you can blame the scientist or the engineer for the appalling number of deaths that occur every year through the use of the automobile. It is irresponsible social use that sometimes makes the automobile look like an unmitigated evil. I mean by this not only personal irresponsibility of drivers, but irresponsibility of our social arrangements governing the use of the automobile. We may at present extract an almost unlimited power from nuclear processes, and the knowledge and skill that makes this possible holds out the prospect for a greatly improved life for much of mankind. The fact that atomic weapons hold over us the threat, not only of personal extinction, but of extinction of the civilization of which we are a part, is a consequence of the state and conflicts of our society. I think that our ability to deal with nature has developed much more rapidly than our understanding of the social and political relationships among men. It is a duty of the scientist, as of all citizens, to aid in the development of a society in which the gifts of science can be wisely used, and not be threats which somehow or other cast a cloud over the bright vision that all of us have of the good life.
What should we do to help, as you suggested, in the development of a better world?
I think that some of you hope to go into science as a career. By all means, work hard and enthusiastically towards the achievement of that goal. Learn mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, and other sciences. Cultivate a curiosity about all of nature. But all this is not quite enough if you are going to live satisfying lives. You too have your obligations as citizens, and you must share in the burden of finding solutions to the problems of war, poverty, and social irresponsibility. To this end, you must also know of the history of civilized man, of his social and economic organization, of his motivations and aspirations. What I am suggesting is that you cannot afford to ignore, at this stage in human history, thought and study of many things besides science. All men who have enjoyed the privilege of education and its rewards have a special obligation to society. The doctor, the lawyer, the engineer, and the scientist all have a role that extends far beyond the practice of medicine, law, engineering, and science. They must use their special training for the good of the larger world, and they can only do this with a deep understanding of all facets of our civilization.
I was interested in what you just said about the lawyer, since I've thought of going into law. Just how important is it for a lawyer to have studied science, Dr. Cush?
It is very important. The lawyer has an influence in our world far beyond his numbers. Lawyers become judges who must make decisions that affect the lives of all of us. They are prominent in legislative bodies and in administrative agencies. They play an important role in the councils of industrial organizations. If they are to deal wisely with the problems of the modern world, they must understand the forces that shape and modify the world. I cannot think of a subject more important than nuclear physics for the student of law to study, just as I cannot think of a subject more important than political science for the student of nuclear physics to study. The world is no longer divided into small compartments, each of which may be occupied by a specialist. The interconnections between the many aspects of life are now so complex that only a person with broad knowledge can deal effectively with contemporary problems.
Perhaps this isn't related to science, but I would like to have your opinion about the role of the arts, of music, and of literature in a world in which science is so important.
The question is by no means irrelevant. Science itself is for many of its practitioners a form of artistic expression. I suspect that the delight that the scientist derives from the observation of nature and from the formulation of the laws that describe nature is quite as great as that derived by a musician in hearing music or in creating a symphony. The products of artistic creation are enduring memorials to what is best in the human spirit. I myself would be unhappy in a world in which the arts are banished or even neglected. I have spoken of the new world that science and technology may make for us. To my mind, it will be a good world only as it allows and fosters the creation and the perception of beauty and an enrichment of human experience. Freedom from drudgery and abundance of the necessities of life, comfort and leisure are of value only as they serve to make human experience more significant, as they enlarge the human spirit. I am convinced that music, painting, literature, and the other arts are on the road to this enlargement.
You said earlier that we would discuss what it's like to be a scientist.
It's rather hard to be specific about this. You will remember that Edith said a little while ago that she supposed the scientist was much like other people. I think that this is true. He may differ from others in the same sense as that in which a lawyer is different from other people, through having a specialized profession and an outlook on life colored by training and experience in the law. Basically, the scientist has probably been endowed by nature with a good set of brains, though not always an exceptional set. He has been highly trained in a rigorous and demanding intellectual discipline. He has a profound love of science and of scientific activity. Generally, however, he has the general qualities of most of mankind.
I would like to ask something more specific about the sort of thing that George was suggesting. Are the scientific professions respected and well paid?
You know, of course, Jim, that the members of the medical profession, by and large, enjoy not only the comforts of life, but the rather considerable respect of the community as well. The engineer is in ever-increasing demand, thanks to a rapidly expanding technology, and his financial and social status is good. I believe, however, that you are thinking more nearly of a scientist engaged in research in pure science. Industry has learned since the war that it is necessary to enlarge the base of fundamental scientific knowledge in order to achieve continuing technological progress. A large number of corporations employ able scientists to engage in basic research. These are often allowed the freedom of choice of problems to work on, and the freedom from considerations of immediate profit that would have been quite startling in the 1930s. And corporations reward the scientist as well as they do employees who engage in engineering or in the sheer economic aspects of the corporation's work. Traditionally, a large fraction of the research of the sort that one might describe as pure research has been done by scientists in the universities. If you examine the pages of the Physical Review, the major journal devoted to the publication of the results of basic physical research in the United States, you will find that research that originates in the universities still far outweighs that which originates in industry. Universities do find staffs, and the conditions of life are such that a very high productivity of scientific research occurs. One might wish that the economic rewards to the university scientist were higher. Still in all, very few professors with the opportunity to follow their own bent and enthusiasm in research and science would be willing to change places with a much more highly paid person who works in a much more intellectually confining atmosphere. What I mean to say is that the non-economic rewards of a life devoted to science are very high.
Can you tell us just what these rewards are? What I would like to ask is what you personally feel you get out of being a scientist.
Again, it is hard to describe something as intangible as personal pleasure and satisfaction. I have the feeling that I am participating in an adventure of heroic dimensions. No other human activity has done as much as science in the last century to change the quality of our civilization. This is in part through the technological changes which science has brought. Perhaps more importantly, science has modified our civilization through the influence of scientific thought on the conception that men have of the world about them and of their relationship to it. I think that the great creative impulses of the age are centered more nearly about science than about any other form of human thought and activity. I think that one wants to spend one's life in doing something or in participating in something that is significant in the life of man and of his civilization. Then there is the great sense of pleasure in understanding how some aspect of the universe operates. It is a real delight to learn something about nature that has not been known before. The satisfaction of making a contribution to the structure of scientific thought, of contributing to the beauty, symmetry, and inclusiveness of the structure is very high. Let me assure you that these rewards persist throughout the lifetime of the scientist. I personally have never regretted for an instant the decision to become a physicist. It is one of the pleasant realities of life that many men find satisfaction in whatever activities they undertake. The doctor does not envy the lawyer, and the lawyer does not envy the scientist. Still, with complete recognition of this fact, I am unable to imagine a career that offers more excitement, that may lead to greater pleasure than one in science. Next time, we'll discuss some actual problems in physics.
Conconi exercises. Rhythm pattern of exercise number 2. Exercise number 2. Rhythm pattern of exercise number 4. Exercise number 4. Rhythm pattern of exercise number 9. Exercise number 9. Rhythm pattern of exercise number 10. Exercise number 10.
Despite your ear's sensitivity to minute changes in air pressure, it is only when the changes are repeated in rapid succession, at least 20 times a second, that your brain perceives them as sound. On the other hand, vibrations that occur more frequently than about 20,000 times a second cannot be heard by the average human ear. This audible frequency range varies considerably with different people and different ages. Generally, as a person grows older, the delicate membranes of the ears grow stiff. Then it becomes more difficult to hear the very high frequencies. Let's get acquainted with the sounds of different frequencies. Listen as we produce a series of vibrations starting at 30 cycles per second and gradually increase the frequency until it is 15,000 cycles per second. 30 cycles per second. 50. 100. 200. 500. 1,000 cycles per second. 2,000. 4,000. 6,000. 8,000. 10,000. 12,000. 15,000 cycles per second. Your ears are probably most sensitive to vibrations in the frequency range between about 1,000 and 4,000 cycles per second. Changes in atmospheric pressure about 1 part in 10 billion, if repeated about 3,500 times a second, will send an audible sound to your brain. At this minute pressure variation, the eardrum moves less than 100,000ths the wavelength of light, 1/10 the diameter of the smallest atom. If your ears were very much more sensitive, you probably would be able to hear the motion of the molecules of the air as they vibrate with thermal energy.
matters not what be thy lot, so love doth guide. For storm or shine, pure peace is thine, whate'er betide. And of these stones, or tyrants' thrones, God able is to raise up seed in thought and deed to faithful his. I darkling sense, arise, go hence, our God is good. False fears are foes, truth tatters those when understood. Love looseth thee and lifteth me, Ayantate's thrall. Their life is light and wisdom might, and God is all. The centuries break, the earth-bound awake, God's glorified, who doth his will, his likeness still is satisfied.
The moon is a circle 19 times as large as the earth. It is similar to a chariot wheel, and the rim of the wheel is hollow and full of fire. This wheel cannot be seen, but its rim contains a round hole, and the fire burning inside that hole is the visible moon.
What? What did he say? Does he really mean that?
These are the words of the 6th century BC Greek philosopher Anaximander.
As the wheel turns, the hole turns with it, and phases and eclipses of the moon depend on the turning of the wheel. The sun, too, is a wheel, and is 28 times the size of the earth. It also has
Up to Anaximander's time, the Greeks had considered the heavenly bodies as part of their rich mythology. Helios and Selene and the other Greek gods and goddesses were the stars and planets. But here was Anaximander to say that the moon was not Selene, the goddess of the moon, but a wheel, and the same for Helios, the god of the sun. His theory may seem implausible to us, but it served to stir the minds of other Greek philosophers to a more realistic study of the heavens. Thales of Miletus lived at the same time as Anaximander, and he is sometimes credited with predicting a solar eclipse in the year 585 BC.
In honor of your great predictions, we, the citizens of this city, wish to reward you, Thales, with this bag of gold, and we will build a statue in your honor.
I do not need your gold or honors. My discovery is enough reward for me. Study and look with your eyes wide open, and you shall know as much as I do. This flat earth of ours is floating on an endless ocean.
But other Greeks were studying and looking at the skies, and they were coming to different conclusions than Thales and Anaximander. Anaxagoras in the 5th century BC made these observations.
The sun is a red-hot mass of fire. In size, it is larger than the southern peninsula of Greece. The moon is made of the same material as the earth. The light that it gives is only a reflection of the sun's light. It has no light of its own. The shadows on the moon are due to the mountains and craters that abound there. These craters are caused by meteors, which are flaming rocks, which originate on the sun.
Impious dog! The moon is the goddess Selene, riding her chariot across the night skies. You shall not dwell in this city.
Anaxagoras was driven from Athens by the angry citizens who were still loyal to heroes of mythology. Around this time, the 5th century BC, the Greeks began to abandon the theory of the flat earth. The Pythagoreans, followers of Pythagoras, set up a secret society.
May I have quiet, please? Please. We have several new members of our group today, and it has been requested that I review some of our basic thoughts about the universe. The entire universe is enclosed in a celestial sphere which rotates very slowly. Affixed to the outer sphere are the stars, and in the middle is the central fire. And around this fire, the Earth, the Moon, the Sun, and all the planets revolve. All of these bodies, including our Earth, are round in shape, and as they turn, they generate music.
How can that be? We've never seen the central fire that we revolve around. And did anyone ever hear this music that you speak of?
We do not see the central fire as our part of the Earth faces outward toward the Moon and Sun.
But do the people in India on the other side of the Earth see this central fire?
No. There is another Earth, our counter-Earth, which revolves between our Earth and the central fire, and shields the central fire. And the music cannot be heard by mere Earthlings.
It's a lot of metaphysical hogwash.
How is this possible?
I don't understand.
The Pythagoreans were ridiculed and persecuted because they believed in the movement of the earth. And as their theories lent themselves to much argument, many men, including the great philosophers Socrates and Plato, believed that the study of astronomy was a waste of effort, other than its use for telling time. Plato's most famous pupil, Aristotle, did not share the convictions of his master. After much study, he evolved his own theories of the universe.
The Earth is at the center of the universe. It does not move. All other bodies move around it. At the limit of the universe is the prime mover, who is the source of all life. Beyond the prime mover is nothing. Not even empty space.
Well, that I do not understand.
The heavens and earth are made up of entirely different matter, and they respond to different laws in nature. The earth is composed of 4 elements: earth, water, air, and fire. They are constantly changing into one another. The heavens are composed of ether, an element that never changes. Therefore, the heavens never can change. In the heavens, only perfect motion can take place. By perfect motion, I mean circular motion at a steady speed. It has no beginning and no end.
But many of the planets did not move in perfect motion. Mars, for example, sometimes traveled eastward and sometimes westward. Sometimes it was bright and sometimes it was dimmer. It moved quickly and it moved slowly. But Aristotle said that these appearances were deceiving, and all heavenly movement must be explained in terms of circular orbits at a steady speed around a motionless Earth. The explanation was left for other astronomers. About 50 years later, there came Aristarchus, a fine mathematician who stated that the sun and not the earth is the center of our universe, and the earth travels in a circumference around the sun. But against the weight of Aristotle's prestige, Aristarchus made little impression on the general masses. He was 17 centuries ahead of his time. Now we proceed to the last 3 Greeks in our saga: Eratosthenes, Hipparchus, and Ptolemy. Eratosthenes was born in 276 BC and was the director of the celebrated library in the city of Alexandria, which was founded by Alexander the Great. By an ingenious method, he was able to be the first man to measure the Earth's diameter accurately. Hipparchus was born in 150 BC and lived on the island of Rhodes. It was he who discovered the precession of the equinoxes and recognized it as a continuous process. His other accomplishments include the determining of the distance to the moon, the making of the first directory of the fixed stars, and the use of the epicycle, which is a small circle, the center of which moves around in the circumference of a larger circle. The epicycle was used to explain the irregular movements of planets. What we know of Hipparchus comes chiefly to us from the works of Ptolemy, who lived about 300 years after Hipparchus. He evolved the system that bears his name, which is a reworking of the use of epicycles, and with this, he was able to foretell the positions of planets and other heavenly bodies with much accuracy. However, he was firm in his belief in Aristotle's work and maintained that the Earth was the center of the universe and the Earth did not move.
If the Earth rotated, clouds and any of the things that fly or can be thrown can never be seen traveling toward the east, because the Earth would always be anticipating them all and forestalling their motions toward the east.
For the next 1,000 years, Ptolemy's system of the universe was accepted without question by practically all in the civilized world. Science had retreated to the position of the Babylonian priests 800 years before Ptolemy's time.
A grateful heart, a garden is where there is always room for every lovely God-like grace to come to perfect bloom. A grateful heart, a fortress is, a staunch and rugged town, where God's omnipotence revealed girds man with mighty power. Heart, a temple is, a shrine so pure and white, where angels of His presence keep calm watch by day or night. Grant then, dear Father, Mother God, whatever else befall, this largesse of a grateful heart that loves and blesses all.
It is May 24th, 1543, and we are in the cathedral of the city of Frauenburg on the coast of the Baltic Sea. The canon of the cathedral, Nicholas Copernicus, lies on his deathbed, paralyzed by a stroke. Into this somber room strides George Reticus, a young man who has been working with Copernicus for several years.
Copernicus, I have the finished book. It arrived today from Nuremberg. on the revolutions of the celestial bodies.
Let me hold it. It is my first printed work.
Now all of Europe will know of your new astronomical theories.
Oh, they are not all new theories. Some I learned from the Greeks, such as Aristarchus.
Oh, true, but we've been tied to Ptolemy's universe too long. Now you have shown that the Earth rotates on her axis, and that she revolves around the sun, along with the other planets. This book will revolutionize men's thinking.
However, Copernicus's work was not received with much enthusiasm. The Catholics and Protestants were both firmly tied to the universe as described by Aristotle and Ptolemy. During the 1,000 years since Ptolemy, the only major work in Europe in astronomy was done to correct the calendar. Even this important work had many roadblocks to overcome due to various religious rivalries. But in the Arab world of North Africa and the Middle East, scholars were translating the works of the Greek philosophers, which they found in the ruins of Alexandria and other great cities. By the 11th century, the Arab Muslim world had moved into Spain, and there the Christian scholars first learned of the great works of the Greeks and translated the invaluable Arabic translations into Latin. As books were still handwritten and few could read any language, the spreading of this knowledge took considerable time. But by 1473, when Copernicus was born, this knowledge was available in various schools and universities. By this time, people no longer believed that the world was flat, and the voyages of Columbus and Magellan more than disproved this fallacy. Copernicus's book was rejected by both Catholics and Protestants, as it could not be confirmed by the Bible or Aristotle's work, which had been made part of the Church's tenets. Some German and English astronomers tried to use Copernicus's calculations, but since Copernicus also believed in Aristotle's perfect circular motion of the planets and used epicycles to explain their variations, the astronomers found his system no easier than the Ptolemy system. After all, Copernicus had made only 27 observations to support his theories. Science demanded many more. Tycho Brahe, a Danish nobleman, was summoned in 1576 to appear before the king, Frederick II.
Your Highness, I am Tycho Brahe, and am here at your bidding.
Brahe, I have learned that you plan to leave Denmark to continue your astronomy studies in Germany.
That is true, Your Highness, but...
No buts, please. A true Dane would remain in his native land, and any good that would come from his work would reflect favorably on his own country.
But in Germany, there are many noted scholars who can help me in my work.
The scholars can just as well visit you as you them. What I am proposing is that an observatory be built for you on an island off the coast of Elsinore Castle. There you will have every convenience and necessity that is required for your work. Assistants, workmen, and servants will be at your beck and call. Do you accept?
I most certainly do.
Shortly thereafter, construction was begun on Uraniborg, and it had every convenience that an astronomer could ask for. With the aid of new instruments, the astrolabe, the quadrant, and the sextant, Brahe set himself and his staff to work with a fury. Every night for 20 years, they measured the positions of the stars and the planets. These undoubtedly were the most accurate observations made up to this time. But with this wealth of material, there was one problem. There was no one to interpret the data. Tycho Brahe was not a mathematician. Eventually, he left Uraniborg and settled outside of Prague under the sponsorship of Rudolf II. 1 year later, he was joined by Johannes Kepler, a young German mathematician.
Herr Kepler, I understand that you have quite a reputation.
Well, I have been fortunate to publish a book on astronomy.
A book? You young fellows think one book can sustain you for a lifetime. I have devoted over 20 years in collecting data about the heavens. The most complete measurements ever.
I look forward to inspecting your observations. They may help me in my work.
Now is not the time for such extracurricular activities. You shall help me in constructing new tables of planetary motion. They will be called the Rudolphine tables in honor of our sponsor.
1 year later, Tycho Brahe was dead, and Kepler was given his position, but at a much smaller salary. Kepler had promised to complete the Rudolphine tables for Brahe, but this was not done until 26 years later. Kepler had been busy with his own experiments. Using the many observations of Brahe, he was able, after a number of years, to discover the true course of the planets. They moved in an ellipse and not in a perfect circle. He also discovered that the speed of a planet varies, faster when it nears the sun and slower when it is further away. He also established a mathematical relationship between a planet's average distance from the sun and the time it takes to make a journey around the sun. These discoveries did away once and for all with the epicycles and other artificial devices used to plot a planet's path. In his time, Kepler received little or no rewards for his work, but in recent years he has been considered as important, if not more so, than Copernicus and Brahe.
Some sounds appear higher or lower to our ears than others. The term we use to describe this relative characteristic is pitch. Pitch depends chiefly on the number of times each second that the air pressure fluctuation on your ear is repeated. Listen as we cause a stretched string to vibrate 440 times a second. Here now is a human voice with vocal cords vibrating at the same frequency. Now listen as we hold a piece of cardboard against a revolving gear. The gear teeth are striking the cardboard 440 times a second. Here are these same sounds again. Notice that the pitch of each sound is the same, although the sources are different. The pitch is the same because the vibrations striking your ears are repeated the same number of times per second. Now, if we double the frequency to 880 times a second, the pitch sounds higher. But the pitch of an 880 cycle tone does not sound exactly twice as high as one at 440. Of course, some persons have been conditioned by their familiarity with musical intervals, such as octaves, to think that doubling or cutting frequency in half is the same as doubling or cutting pitch in half. However, psychological tests have shown that pitch and frequency of pure tones do not have a simple one-to-one relationship. For example, many persons would judge that this tone is 1/2 the pitch of this tone. Although the pitch may sound 1/2, the frequency is not. The frequency of the higher tone is 500. The lower tone is 200 cycles per second. Apparently, we cannot depend on our ears to determine relative frequency, nor can we use frequency numbers to designate relative pitch. The two are not linearly proportional. Science has, however, worked out a subjective pitch scale for pure tones. The commonly chosen reference frequency is 1,000 cycles per second. The tone you heard is designated to have a pitch of 1,000 subjective units, sometimes called mels, M-E-L-S. Mels from the word melody. A tone with a pitch twice as high is designated 2,000 mels. Actually, its frequency is 3,120 cycles per second. A tone which sounds to our ears 3 times as high as the reference is said to have a pitch 3 times as high, 3,000 mils. Actually, its frequency is 9,000 cycles per second. As you can see, a Mel scale provides an objective means for comparing pitches of various pure tones. Although pitch depends chiefly on frequency, it also varies slightly with the loudness of a sound. Listen as we play 2 pure tones, one softly, then one loudly. Which tone has the lower pitch? Actually, both tones have the same frequency, 200 cycles per second. But the louder tone sounds a little lower pitched to most persons. In fact, experiments have shown that in general, low-frequency tones seem lower pitched when played very loudly. On the other hand, high-frequency tones seem higher pitched when played very loudly. To be sure, the difference in pitch is very slight. Nevertheless, it is discernible to some persons.
Maximum level glide tone, 20,000 to 20 cycles per second.
Shepherd, show me how to go o'er the hillside steep, how to gather, how to sow, how to feed thy sheep. I will listen for thy voice, lest my footsteps stray. I will follow and rejoice all the rugged way. Thou wilt bind the stubborn will, wound the callous breast, make self-righteousness be still, break her stupid rest. Strangers on a barren shore, laboring long and lone, we would enter by the door, and thou knowest thine own. So when day grows dark and cold, tear our triumph on, thy lambkins to the fold, take them in thine arms. Feed the hungry, heal the heart, till the morning's beam, white as wool ere they depart. Shepherd, wash them clean.
Sound vibrations may be generated by many different sources. Whether they originate in the orifice of a modern jet engine or the throat of a 400-year-old tortoise calling its mate, or an electrical buzzer, the vibrations have essentially the same effect. They fluctuate the pressure of the atmosphere on our eardrums, causing them to move rapidly back and forth. This pressure variation is measured in terms of a unit called a microbar, which is 1 dyne per square centimeter. We can decrease the pressure variation and thereby make the sound less intense by decreasing the amplitude of the source's vibrations. Listen as we decrease the power of the buzzer. If we increase the power, the sound intensity will increase. What we are doing is varying the amount of sound energy which stimulates your ear each instant. This can be accomplished another way, too, by varying the distance the pressure waves have to travel to your ear. If we move our microphone away from the source, the intensity will decrease. If we move our microphone closer to the source so that the energy has less distance to travel to your ear, the intensity will increase. Intensity may also vary according to the characteristics of the room in which you are listening. If we play a pure tone of constant intensity, you can, by moving your head slightly to the right and left, make the sound seem less or more intense. Try it. This phenomenon occurs because sound waves that have been reflected from the walls interfere with sound waves that are coming from the loudspeaker. They combine to produce pressure waves that seem to stand still, thus forming areas of high and low intensity in the room. However, ideally, in free space where there are no reflecting walls, the energy at your ear will vary inversely as the square of your ear's distance from the sound source. Listen. I am now speaking to you from a distance of 1 foot from the microphone. I am now speaking to you from a distance of 3 feet from the microphone. You see, by making a sound travel 3 times as far, we have decreased its intensity to about 1/9. Listen again. I am now 1 foot from the microphone. I am now 3 feet from the microphone. To sum up, the intensity of a sound depends chiefly on the energy of the source and its distance from your ear. Thus, intensity may be measured in energy units, ergs per square centimeter, or converting to power units, in watts per square centimeter. For most purposes, however, it is more useful to measure the intensity of sound on a comparative scale. It's customary to express this relative intensity in a unit of measure called a bell, B-E-L, bell, named after Alexander Graham Bell. Listen to these 2 sounds. They have an intensity difference of 1/10 of a bell, 1 decibel. As you heard, a difference of 1 decibel is so small as to be barely perceptible. If one tone has 1/4 the power, that's 1/2 the sound pressure of another, it is said to be 6 decibels less intense. If one tone has 1/16 the power, or 1/4 the sound pressure of another, it is said to be 12 decibels lower. If one tone has 1/100th the power, or 1/10 the sound pressure of another, it is said to be 20 decibels less intense. As you can see, the decibel scale is logarithmic, and the decibel expresses a relative quantity, the ratio between 2 acoustic powers. When it is desired to express the intensity of only one sound, a scale is used in which the reference intensity for 0 decibels is 10 to the -16 watts per square centimeter. A person with very good hearing in an extremely quiet location can just barely hear a 1,000 cycle tone at this 0 level of intensity. The corresponding pressure variation is only about 0.0002 dynes per square centimeter. That's less than 1/1000th normal atmospheric pressure. You see, then, your ear is extremely sensitive. So that you can become familiar with the decibel scale, listen as we vary the intensity of my voice. Now I am speaking to you in a voice with an intensity about 6 decibels lower than normal. Now my voice has an intensity level about 10 decibels lower than normal conversation. 20 decibels less intensity sounds like this. 30 decibels less intensity.
Normal level glide tone, 15,000 to 30 cycles per second.
Did you ever notice how the pitch of a train whistle suddenly lowers as the train rushes past you? Or if you are on a moving train going past a clanging crossing bell, how the bell's pitch changes. These are two examples of a phenomenon called the Doppler effect, in honor of the Austrian physicist Christian Doppler, who first explained it in 1842. What happens is this. When you are on a moving train approaching the clanging bell, you are actually meeting the sound waves before they would ordinarily reach you. So more sound vibrations impinge on your ear each second than if you were not moving. Consequently, your eardrum is made to vibrate faster, giving you the impression of higher pitch. When you are moving away from the bell, in effect, running away from the sound waves, fewer vibrations reach you during any interval, and the pitch that you hear is lower than it would be if you were not moving. Listen again. In the case where you are stationary and the train whistle moving, the sound waves ahead of the whistle are crowded together and made shorter, while the waves behind the whistle are spread out and made longer. This change in wavelength does not change the speed with which the waves travel, but it does change the number of waves that hit your ear in a second. So, as the train approaches you, more vibrations per second reach your ear, and you hear a higher pitch than you would if the whistle wasn't moving. And as the train goes away, fewer vibrations per second reach your ear, and the pitch you hear is lower than it would be if the whistle wasn't moving. Here is another example of the Doppler effect: racing cars. The roar of the first car you heard changed pitch almost a musical fifth as it passed close by. The slower cars, bringing up the rear, changed pitch about a minor third. Obviously, the Doppler effect can be used to measure the speed of a sound source. The greater the change in pitch, the faster the source is moving.
Sound effects quiz. Can you identify these everyday sounds? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
still, still with thee, when purple morning breaketh, when the bird waketh, and the shadows flee, fairer than morning, lovelier than the daylight, dawns the sweet consciousness I am with thee. Alone with thee, amid the changing shadows, solemn the hush of nature newly born. Alone with thee in breathless adoration, in the calm dew and freshness of the morn. So shall it ever be in the bright morning, when hearts awaking see the shadows flee. Oh, in that hour, and fairer than the dawning, rises the glorious thought, I am with thee.
Fourteen. 15. 16. 17. 'Stylus test 1,000 cycles, maximum level 7 centimeters per second.